We got to talk Tesla because I just interviewed, an amazingly brilliant mind over at ARK Invest, Brett Whitten, phenomenal researcher. And the full interview will be on my channel Saturday, February 18th. But we're going to talk about Tesla and this potential next generation vehicle. Brett is convinced that Tesla is going to announce the next generation vehicle. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about my thoughts about what he said, but I also want to first talk about what Wall Street says about this, specifically Goldman Sachs. So here is Goldman Sachs' take on Tesla, and then we'll get into ARK Invest's take, and then we'll get into some of my commentary. Take a look at this. Goldman Sachs says that for Investor Day, you should expect Tesla to talk about the Generation 3 platform, a lower cost structure, potentially a Generation 3 vehicle platform, where costs could be reduced by about 50%. March 1st is going to be the Investor Day, and they believe that everything about Investor Day will be about how is Tesla going to get their costs for vehicles down 50%, which actually increases their pricing power, because if they, let's say, reduce prices 25% but reduce costs 50%, you actually have massive PP, massively huge pricing power. It's really incredible. In fact, rumor has it that Tesla might be close to announcing officially their Giga Mexico, either this weekend or as early as late as next week. We'll see if that rumor ends up being true. But I mean, just think about the cost of goods sold for manufacturing in in Mexico relative to Texas. Cost of goods sold for labor, your average wage in Mexico is somewhere around $3, $3.25, $3.50. Whereas out in Texas, you're probably $15 to $25. So you're already looking at reducing your cost of labor by an order of magnitude of 4x just by nearshoring in Mexico. Really incredible labor cost reductions. And what you'll have, some people will hear about that as, exploitation, here comes the capitalist to exploit. But what you're actually doing is you're just moving to an area where you have a lot of auto manufacturers already. I guess Mercedes and GM are already exploiting Mexicans at lower pay. But what the reality is, the more you have companies move to Mexico, like Tesla opening a Gigafactory in Mexico, what you're actually doing is you're creating more demand for housing and labor, and you actually increase average labor costs. And so maybe you'll see that average labor cost actually rise, and you're actually increasing the standard of living in those regions of northeast Mexico. So we'll see what ends up happening. But I'm actually relatively bullish on the Giga Mexico. But Goldman Sachs here believes that Tesla's going to talk about achieving this cost reduction and then being able to ship a lower cost consumer-based vehicle based off of that third generation platform. Now, Goldman Sachs believes that investors, think that Tesla would start shipping a lower cost consumer vehicle starting in 2025. Now, Goldman Sachs says they do not model for a lower cost vehicle. They're not projecting in their price forecast that Tesla will have a lower cost vehicle out by 2025. And they do not expect that Tesla is going to announce a specific product on Investor Day. However, there are a lot of investor rumors about maybe a Model 2, a Model Q. A Model Q is sort of like another slap in the face to the short sellers because Tesla Q is considered your Tesla short position. But anyway, what's fascinating about this is most financial models right now, most people who essentially project prices for Tesla, they look at, okay, how much money can Tesla make just ramping the 3, maybe get the Cybertruck in there, throw a little bit of semi-truck in, a little bit of mega pack expansion, that's it. Those are most models. Most models aren't touching robotaxi. Most models are not touching a lower cost generation vehicle. However, if it is possible that a Generation 3 vehicle could be built at a 50% lower cost, again, remember, you could take something like a Model 3, which, selling in that $40K range right now, and you could lower the cost of these substantially. Let's see what we could get a Model 3 for right now. So let's go to order now on the Tesla page, and let's see what the current price is for a Model 3. Keep in mind that Tesla has been reducing the cost of the 3, but actually after reducing cost, ended up raising the cost of the Model Y because they ended up selling out for Q1. which is through basically, you have to wait until April now to get a Model Y. But anyway, you've got a Model 3 over here at about $43,000. If you could lower the cost of a Model 3 by 50%, you could potentially lower the cost of this by as much as 40%. You don't even necessarily have to announce a new car. You could just sell the Model 3 cheaper, right? So, I mean, think about that. If it's $43,000, let me make sure we don't have incentives on. Yeah, get rid of the potential savings over here. You could maybe lower the cost of this sucker by 40%. That would bring you down to $25,800. There's your $25,000 car. You don't actually need a new car. You could just take the Model 3 and sell it for 40% less. If you get your costs down 50%, you're actually gaining operating leverage. You're gaining gross margin while lowering prices potentially as much as 40%. And that gets you basically right to $25,000. $25,900, call it. So you don't really need a new vehicle to be announced to get to a $25,000 car if Goldman Sachs is right and Tesla can pull off a margin reduction or cost reduction of 50%. That's pretty incredible. Maybe they can do that via a Gigafactory in Mexico, for example, right? And deliver the United States version via the Inflation Reduction Act, which wants vehicles produced in North America, which includes Mexico. And you could potentially create that $25,000 vehicle without even announcing a new car. Now, ARK, well, I should speak specifically of Brett Whitten, which you'll see in the interview. Again, it's being posted Saturday, February 18th. You can see the full interview that I have with ARK Invest's Brett Whitten. Brett believes that Tesla is going to announce a new vehicle on Investor Day. He believes, and he said it extremely convincingly, and he believes it's going to be a vehicle that will be the essentially epitome of the robotaxi vehicle. It will be Tesla's robotaxi vehicle that in the future you could actually have an optional steering wheel for. That initially it might ship with a steering wheel, but in the future it won't have a steering wheel. And it will be the foundation for the robotaxi network. That's pretty incredible. Now, in order to create that, you would expect that full self-driving and the roadmap for full self-driving and some of the cutting-edge full self-driving needs to be substantially better than it is now. Right now, you still need a driver, right? That last 10% on AI is so hard. The first 90% is exponentially easier than that last 10% to actually get to real full self-driving. And we'll see. I've purposefully actually, just to see how close we are on the wide release, let my car get into funky situations and then let it do stupid things in a safe way, obviously. Like I'll go to yields and it'll treat it like a stop sign and there's traffic around and it's in this unknown area where it just hasn't trained for yet. And I'm just like, all right, go ahead. The people behind me are just gonna have to wait 30 seconds while the car figures it out. Now I feel bad for those people. I'm sorry. I monopolized their time, their 30 seconds, for the sake of beta testing. I feel bad about that because if everybody did that, there'd be a lot more traffic on the road. In fairness, there was not a lot of traffic on the road. There just happened to be cars behind me at that point, and I did get a honk or two. But anyway, there's still some work to be done, and who knows? Maybe the cutting edge tech already has that. So I would expect we'll see a lot of information about the future of full self-driving on Investor Day, as well as potentially that robotaxi platform. But while ARK believes that will be the announcement of a completely new vehicle, I actually lean a little bit more towards Goldman Sachs' opinion that you could just cut costs by 50% for the Model 3. And Goldman doesn't even talk about this particularly, but if you then reduce prices of the Model 3 by 40%, you have a $25,000 Model 3. It's crazy. So, and you still have a growth in gross margin, which is wild. That sounds like a big PP to me. A lot of pricing power. But ARK Invest is convinced, at least Brett is, that there will be a new vehicle announced. So they have, and they said that very, very confidently. So good for them. And if they're right, then I'm going to start scratching my head going, what did you know? But anyway, they're convinced it'll be a robotaxi style vehicle. What I also thought was interesting in my conversation with him is he thought that in their models, they've started realizing that robotaxis are going to become so cheap that people are going to use so many more robotaxis that you might actually substantially increase congestion on roads, that you might actually have to create a capsuled-based robotaxi network, where kind of like Uber Pool you don't want to sit next to other people, but you end up having a car that has like 4 different capsules where people can get into different capsules and like optionally open partitions if they're traveling with family or whatever. So that way you don't have to interact with strangers, but you could actually have a robotaxi network that drops people off along the same path without, driving past those potential drop-off points by having a sort of capsuled style robotaxi. It sounds a lot like a bus, but one that has sort of private compartments. I thought that was quite a fascinating idea, and that is one that I personally do not think we are going to hear about on Investor Day, but I may be pleasantly surprised. Again, I think Investor Day will probably be a buy the rumor, sell the news event for the stock. I think that just reducing costs by opening gigafactories in lower cost areas, whether that's Indonesia or Mexico, or potentially both to deliver a cheaper Model 3, could be all you really need. So you don't actually need a new car. You just need a more efficient platform. So that's my take on Tesla and what's coming for Tesla.